Hello, it's week 4 of season 8 of the Andy Griffith Show. This week's episode title is Andy's Trip to Raleigh. Andy is sitting in Elliot's fix-it shop, and Gooder walks in with the suit that he rented for tomorrow night's dance. And Andy says he hasn't picked out his suit yet, but he's got it reserved. And then Howard comes in, and he tells Andy that Andy has a long-distance call from Raleigh waiting on him over at the courthouse. Yeah, some lawyer in Raleigh needs Andy to come up there and discuss the testimony he's about to give in a big case against the county that's being brought about an accident that happened in Mayberry, and an accident that Andy worked. And it has to be tomorrow, so Andy's not going to be able to take Helen to the dance. And he says she's going to be mad. And he asks Howard to be Helen's date instead. And Howard says yes, but Helen is real disappointed when she hears. But she finally says, okay, if that's the way it's gonna be, then I'll go to the dance with Howard. So Andy goes to Raleigh to meet with the attorney. It turns out the attorney is a pretty woman, and she meets him at the pool behind her house. She's in her bathing suit, and while Andy reads the transcript, she goes swimming in the pool. Then she gets out and says, Andy can go swimming too. There's some spare trunks for him in the pool house. And he says no, but then she invites him to stay for supper. And after they discuss the case for a while, Andy changes his mind about swimming. And the next day, Emmett and Gooder see Andy drive back into town in Andy's convertible. And Andy's got a sunburn all over his face. And they think it's funny. They say it don't look like he did much work. But Andy says, I did. I spent the whole day with an attorney. But they still laugh at him. And then Andy goes to Helen's house. Howard is there too, returning some gloves that Helen left in the car from the dance last night. And they both notice his sunburn too. He says it's 'cause he had the top down in the car on the trip deck. And Andy keeps trying to get the conversation back on the dance last night. And he invites Helen up to Myers Lake for a picnic the next afternoon, and she says yeah. But then the audience sees that same attorney back in Raleigh making plans to come to Mayberry tomorrow to talk to Andy some more. Yeah, apparently she still needs to prepare some more testimony with Andy. And the next morning, Helen finds out from the newspaper that the attorney on this big case is a woman. And Andy comes in to take her up for the picnic, and she mentions that fact to him. And he says, oh, didn't I mention that? And she starts getting mad. But then Andy gets her back in a good mood by saying, oh, this attorney is 40-ish and heavy-set and grim. And he says he's got to go back to the courthouse before they leave, and he asks whether Helen can take him up over there. And she says yes. Meanwhile, the attorney, Miss Drake, pulls into town and stops at the filling station. And she asks Goober where she can find Sheriff Taylor. And Goober gets all nervous for Andy and avoids the question. But she leaves and finds Andy in the courthouse anyway. And then Helen drives up and finds Miss Drake there with Andy. Yeah, and Helen says that Miss Drake is not 40-ish and heavy-set and grim. And Miss Drake can see that Helen is getting mad, and it makes her uncomfortable. So she excuses herself to go get a sandwich. And then Andy and Helen have a fight. And he says, yeah, I did lie to you about how Miss Drake looks. But that's just because of your suspicious nature. He says, I trust you, Helen, but you don't trust me. And then Gooder comes in, and he warns Andy about somebody in town looking for him, and that makes Helen even more mad. And she leaves. And that night, after Andy finishes his work with Miss Drake, he takes Helen some chocolates over at her house to make up for missing the picnic and for the fight that they had. And now Helen has a sunburn. It turns out she went to Myers Lake anyway, and all she'll tell Andy is that she went with a guy who's 40-ish and heavy-set, and then he and she talked about trust. And Andy understands her message, and he lets it go at that. We'll see you next week for episode 5, which is going to be entitled Opie Steps Up in Class.